Universalist Church is located at 490 Aguajito Road on the east side of Highway 1 at the Highway 68 exit to Pacific Grove, but in the opposite direction. Sunday services are at 10:30, and everyone's welcome. You can also find us online at uucmp.org. We worship together with living hearts and open minds, promoting peace, equality, respect for the earth, questioning, reflecting, learning, leading. We change ourselves as we change the world.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Paul Jessen. I have the privilege of being a member of the Board of Trustees for this congregation. Welcome to all, old friends and newcomers. If we have any people here for the first or second time, I especially welcome you and commend your courage and curiosity to join us today.
Hi, my name is Karen, and I love being a member of this church and being a Unitarian Universalist. In fact, everyone who knows me knows that about me. Why? Because anytime somebody says, "How are you? What have you been reading lately? Where are you going this weekend?" I'm going to be talking about our church and something it's made me think about or want to read or go to. And so that's important to me. Another way it comes out is I recently signed up for an online dating service. Other people are writing down things like, "I like pina coladas and walking in the rain." And they're saying their favorite movies and music. And I'm saying I'm a Unitarian Universalist. I like to think about how I can be a better person, how to deal with the troubles in the world. And one of my best experiences is sitting in community with all of you and singing. Also, I like to work for peace and justice. Well, this time of year, though, in spite of my love for the church, I have a little bit of problems when we're talking about finances. And that's because, as my husband used to say, he is a native Californian, Karen's from Iowa, where being cheap is a virtue. And it's true. I am so cheap, I hardly ever go to movies or concerts. And I buy my clothes at rummage sales, mostly, because even Goodwill or something like that seems fairly expensive to me. So it's a bit of a problem, but I thought I would share with you how I figure it out. You may want to get out a pencil and paper, because this is a really good way to start thinking about it. Here's what I do first. I think of the concrete benefits of being a member of this church. And of course, I have to pay for things that are concrete and I receive. That wouldn't be right if I didn't. So I think of a couple hours of childcare a week. I think of a good lecture a week. So that whatever I would give for a good lecture, I have to multiply that times 50. Or so. And then I say a good musical concert. Excellent music here. Multiply that times 50. A good class for myself or for my child. A good educational experience for my child. Paid a bit for that before. So again, multiply that times 50. And a good magazine. Because I get this great magazine, I read it cover to cover, sometimes twice, sometimes I rip out articles and file them. So I have them for later. Multiply that one times 12. So those are the concrete benefits. I get those first, and I add those up. Then I look at the little brochure, and I put in a little bit more because I'm too cheap. Then I look at the sort of less concrete, but still benefits. And I call those the insurance policies. In case I ever need a nice room to have something, pay a little bit for that each month. But this nice new improved room facility here. Then I think, I actually have at work a policy, an insurance policy that I help to pay for that is for counseling. And I have, through this church, a sort of insurance policy for professional counseling. Thank you. So I put in a bit for that. And then I think in terms of long-term care. Well, not in the way we've usually been thinking of it lately, but in terms of our community of caring. When I hurt my knee, people came to my assistance if I needed driving, and who knows what could happen in the future. So this community of caring is another concrete benefit. And so I add that up and put that in. And now I come to the part that is about donation. Now, you probably are like me and you receive lots and lots of email and snail appeals. And they all look good. We want to help out everybody. And I have to decide what to do, and it's painful for a cheap person. So one of the things that I do is I give to the church my donation. And isn't it wonderful that there's a place where I can know I make a difference in the community, I help out in the areas that are of special interest to me. I have a person who goes out into the community in my name and does works for a better community. And all of you, a lot of you do that for me as well. And the name of our church comes out there. I also think in terms of our church being an accepting place. I'm especially interested in that for lesbian and gay young people. I think that's a matter of life and death. And I also like to think I'm a part of I help, and yet I hardly ever help. So this is something that I do. So that donation helps to make me feel better about all those ones that come to me that I pass by. Then I also want to think about my weekly donation, and I still give my dime, well now I've moved it up to $1 every week into the collection plate, so that has to go in there. And then finally I think about the gift. And first I think of the gift I'm giving to all my friends out there in the world. And I want them, especially those who go to a conservative church, a not so accepting church, and those who think they don't need any church. I want them to have an alternative in case they ever change their mind. So this is a gift I give to them. And then I think of the gift I want to give to you. And first, there's two kinds of gifts. The first one is the gift of gratitude. And I think about how all of you have helped me, as a single person especially, every week, to know that there are people that care about me, and I feel it when I come here. And then also when times of great tragedy, when my husband had that devastating stroke, he was missing for so long, and then we found that he had committed suicide. Well, during that time and afterwards, I need a big gift of gratitude for that. And then finally, the gift of love. And so I think how much for the gifts that I want to give to all of you, I give in your name so that the church will be here for you. So that's the way I think of this time and finances. Advice from a cheap person.
Superstitious.
Well, I don't need to be super. I'm fine just the way I am.
No. Superstitious means you believe in good luck, bad luck, an event on Friday the 13th, and scary stuff. And also, I'm marking my calendar for Sunday, October 11th.
Friday the 13th? Cool. I like Friday the 13th, and I'll be there. But what's happening on October 11th?
Oh, I'm purring about Gavel, this year's UUCMP Talent and Service Auction. And October 11th is the deadline for you to turn in your submissions for the auction, because without submissions, we don't have an auction. On Friday, November 13th, we're going to have a fabulous catered dinner, catered by Rima Crow. And there'll be a live auction of donated talent and service items. There's a flyer in your order of service, looks like that tells all about it. And the kids can come too. There'll be pizza and activities for them. It's going to be great fun.
Well, fluff my tail. Where do I sign up for this gavel thing?
Well, there's a sign-up table out there in the welcome hall, and you can get all the information from one of the spooky volunteers.
What can I donate to the gavel?
Oh, just about anything that could be done or delivered after auction night. You could cook a dinner,
Bake a pie?
knit a scarf,
Watch stars in the sky?
or the lunar eclipse, which is tonight. Bake some cookies.
Take care of a cat?
Bake a cake or make a hat.
Host folks to play cards or a game?
Or any fun thing that's about the same.
Have folks over to taste some wine?
Anything you could do will be just fine.
I know what things I can do.
And I bet you'll get some good ideas too. We need you to donate your talents and services.
So get a form, fill it out, and put it in the box by the deadline of Sunday,
October 11th.
Our call to worship this morning is an affirmation by the Reverend Scott W. Alexander. In a world with so much hatred and violence, we need a religion that proclaims the inherent worth and dignity of every person.
In a world with so much brutality and fear, we need a religion that seeks justice, equality, and compassion in human relations.
In a world with so many persons abused and neglected, we need a religion that calls us to accept one another and encourages one another to spiritual growth.
In a world with so much dogmatism and falsehood, we need a religion that challenges us to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
In a world with so much tyranny and oppression, we need a religion that affirms the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process.
In a world with so much inequality and strife, we need a religion that strives toward the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all.
In a world with so much environmental degradation, we need a religion that advocates respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part.
In a world with so much uncertainty and despair, we need a religion that teaches our hearts to hope and our hands to serve. Please.
And now, along with many other Unitarian Universalist congregations across the world, we kindle our chalice. You'll find the words in our order of service. We gather together as a community of memory and hope, We gather together as a community of memory and hope to celebrate life and its infinite possibilities for love. We light this chalice as a symbol of the light within every human heart. May our individual sparks meet and merge, bringing both light and warmth to the world.
I have a story for you this morning. I think. Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. Our story this morning is called In God's Name, and it's by Sandy Eisenberg Sasso. And Sandy Eisenberg Sasso is a rabbi. Anybody know what a rabbi is? It's kind of like a Jewish minister, okay? So, right? All right, so she's a rabbi, and she wrote this story about God's name. All right, it's got nice pictures too. After God created the world, all living things on earth were given a name. The plants and the trees, the animals and the fish, and each person, young and old, had a special name. But no one knew the name for God. So each person searched for God's name. The farmer whose skin was dark like the rich brown earth from which all things grew called God source of life. The girl whose skin was as golden as the sun that turned night into day called God creator of light. The man who tended sheep in the valley called God shepherd. The tired soldier who fought too many wars called God maker of peace. The artist who carved figures from the earth's hard stone called God my rock. Sometimes the people who called God by different names were puzzled. They said every living thing has a single name: the marigold, pansy, and lily, the oak tree, sequoia, and pine. God must have a single name that is greater and more wonderful than all the other names. Each person thought his name for God was the greatest. Each person thought her name for God was the very best. The farmer who called God source of life said, "This is the true name for God." The girl who called God creator of life insisted, "This is the most splendid name for God." The shepherd, soldier, and artist believed they each had the perfect name for God. But no one listened, least of all God. And so each person kept searching for God's name. The woman who cared for the sick called God healer. The slave who was freed from bondage called God redeemer. The grandfather whose hair was white with the years called God Ancient One. The grandmother who was bent with age and sorrow called God Comforter. The young woman who nursed her newborn son called God Mother. The young man who held the hand of his baby daughter called God Father. And the child who was lonely called God Friend. All the people called God by different names. They tried to tell one another that their name was the best, the only name for God, and that all the other names were wrong. But no one listened, least of all God. And so each person kept searching for God's name. Then one day, the person who called God Ancient One, and the one who called God Friend, the one who called God Mother, and the one who called God Father, all the people who called God by a different name came together. They knelt by a lake that was clear and quiet like a mirror, God's mirror. Then each person who had a name for God looked at the others who had a different name. They looked into God's mirror and saw their own faces and the faces of all the others. And they called out their names for God: Source of life, Creator of light, Shepherd, Mother, Maker of peace, my rock, healer, Redeemer, Ancient One, Comforter, Mother, Father, Friend, all at the same time. At that moment, the people knew that all the names for God were good, and no name was better than another. Then all at once their voices came together, and they called God One. Everyone listened, most of all, God. The end. All right, please help stack the pillow.
Religion is in the news. Pope Francis departs for Rome tonight after 6 days in the U.S., where he addressed Congress, visited the homeless, and sparked debate between Catholics who are arguing about whether or not he is too liberal and if he should be talking about climate change. Ben Carson, who is currently a top contender for the GOP presidential nomination, answered on Meet the Press that a Muslim should not be allowed to become president because, quote, Islam is inconsistent with the values and principles of America and inconsistent with the U.S. Constitution. Kim Davis, a county clerk in Kentucky, was jailed when she refused to follow the Supreme Court's decision and issue licenses to same-sex couples. She cited God as her authority and stated that doing so would be against her beliefs as an apostolic Christian. So it is difficult these days to avoid discussions on religion. And really, why would we want to avoid a discussion on religion, as Karen so articulately voiced? It seems to me that this is the perfect time for Unitarian Universalists to be prepared to answer the question, well, what do you believe? What's this religion all about? How are you doing at articulating our religion? Do you have an elevator speech? An elevator speech is a short summary used to quickly and simply define a process or a product or a service or an organization. The term comes from a scenario of meeting someone on an elevator, and you have the time of the elevator ride to pitch yourself or your organization, 30 seconds to 2 minutes. If you have piqued the person's interest, the conversation will continue beyond the elevator ride. Doug Mutter writes in his article, "Stop the elevator, I'm not done." Quote, "The elevator speech problem, it seems to me, comes down to this. If the components of Unitarian Universalism are in my listener's mental religion box at all, they're probably somewhere near the bottom. So I can't just point. I've got to unpack the box, flinging away irrelevant concepts until the elevator floor is littered with them. Unitarian Universalism isn't about getting into heaven. It's not about a creed. There's no UU Pope, no founding prophet, no golden age, no scripture that it's all based on. Ding! Well, that sounds like me. Except there would be a lot of pauses and ums, and my head would be spinning trying to get the words out that articulates my religion and my love for it. Here's a good example from the Reverend Carl Grieg. Unitarian Universalism seeks to create a community where you can be spiritual and religious. We draw wisdom from all the world's religious traditions, from modern science and from our own direct experience. We affirm the inherent worth and dignity of each individual, and at our best, we freely choose to work together to build a better world for all people. We don't pretend to have all the answers, but we are on a journey together of living the questions. I love that part. A journey together of living the questions. Well, I like this and it, and the deadline for this worship reflection has inspired me to write my own elevator speech. Unitarian Universalism is a religion that honors actions and how we treat our fellow human beings and the earth. Individual choice is central to Unitarian Universalism. We honor many faith traditions, and this satisfies my need for many paths up the mountain. Each congregation decides on the structure and types of services that their church will have, but they all have the democratic process in common. As with all religions, Unitarian Universalism provides a place of community, love, safety, and support as we travel through life's ups and downs. This is a work in progress, a living document, if you will. But for right now, I have an answer that goes beyond just stammering. I challenge you to work on your elevator speech too. And don't be all tied up in it has to be perfect, the first draft or the second draft or the third draft. Just write something that you can say to the answer when people ask, what does Unitarian Universalism mean to you? This world needs us to articulate our faith so that like-minded folks who are searching are able to find us. So may it be.
Now is the time we set aside each week to think about what's been happening in our lives. This week we ask for thoughts and prayers of concern for Val Gottesman, who fell in her home and broke her pelvic bone. There's a card for her at the Caring Network table. We also ask for thoughts and prayers of healing for Tim Wilson. He had a successful heart valve replacement surgery and is making good recovery. He'll be in Stanford Hospital for several more days before returning home. And then thoughts and prayers of healing for Kathleen Sullivan, who had knee replacement surgery on Friday and went home on Saturday. I invite you to now join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation, guided by the words of Victoria Safford. What if there were a universe, a cosmos that began in shining blackness, out of nothing, out of fire, out of a single silent breath? And into it came billions and billions of stars, stars beyond imagining. And near one of them a world, a blue-green world so beautiful that learned clergymen could not even speak about it cogently. And brilliant scientists, in trying to describe it, began to sound like poets with their physics, their mathematics, their empirical, impressionistic musing. What if there were a universe in which a world was born out of a smallish star? And into that world, at some point, flew red-winged blackbirds, and into it swam sperm whales, and into it came crocuses, and wind to lift the tiniest hairs on naked arms in spring when you run out to the mailbox. And into it at some point came onions out of soil, and came Mount Everest, and also the coyote we've been seeing in the woods about a mile from here, just after sunrise in the morning when the moon is full. Into that world came animals and elements and plants and imagination, the mind and the mind's eye. If such a universe existed and you noticed it, what would you do? What song would come out of your mouth? What prayer? What praises? What sacred offering? What whirling dance? What religion? And what reverential gesture would you make to greet that world every single day that you were in it?
The first reading today is from the Reverend Scott Alexander, from his book that he edited called Salted with Fire, Answering the Religious Right with the Big Heart of Universalism. The bottom line is that, like it or not, we must be evangelists, unashamed evangelists, willing to speak up for the kind and generous truth that is universalism. The word evangelist carries extremely negative connotations for most of us. Most Unitarian Universalists probably think of evangelists as pushy, arrogant, obnoxious zealots who sell religion on television or door to door, because it actually does accurately describe many conservative Christian evangelists we have had the misfortune of encountering over the years. But is it possible that the only reason we think so poorly of evangelists is that next to nobody who thinks or feels as we do religiously ever engages in the process of publicly sharing their faith? Unitarian Universalists are notoriously spiritually silent because we demand to think for ourselves, are respectful of human difference, and don't appreciate it when someone else tries to ram their beliefs down our throats. We tend to shy away from even cautiously and respectfully sharing with others what it is we believe and how those beliefs help us to strive to be better, kinder, larger people. It is hard for some of us to talk back to fundamentalism by talking up our own faith, but I passionately believe we cannot afford such a self-imposed silence in dangerous and divisive times such as these, written in 1994.
Our second and final reading is from Paul Razor's book, Reclaiming Prophetic Witness, Liberal Religion in the Public Square. And this piece is from the foreword, written by Dan McCannon. This is a time for prophets. And just so you know, that's Prophetes. This is a time for prophets. In the United States, economic inequality is tearing our communities apart, depriving young people of hope in the future. Across the world, the unsustainable use of fossil fuels has poisoned the soil and air, turning farms into deserts and threatening island nations with destruction. Great liberation struggles of past generations remain incomplete. All too often, churches close their doors to queer families, schools close their doors to immigrant children, and hospitals close their doors to the most vulnerable. The earth and her people cry out in anguish, in indignation, and yet still in hope. In times like these, prophets must speak loudly, clearly, and with many voices. We need prophets of economics to explain the cascading consequences of inequality and envision workplace democracy and socially responsible investment. We need prophets of science who can track the steady increase in global temperatures, chart its implications, and convey the urgency of those implications to policymakers. We need prophets of the arts to express their vision for social renewal in stirring songs and inspiring stories. We need prophets who testify to the human costs of inequality and oppression and tell their stories of how individuals and communities are fighting back. And of course, we need prophets of faith to bring the rich resources of religion into the struggle, making ancient traditions new by applying them to today's challenges. All right, Dan McCannon says, we need prophets of faith to bring the rich resources of religion into the struggle, making ancient traditions new by applying them to today's challenges. How about that, Pope? Talk about making ancient traditions new by applying them to today's challenges. I think Pope Francis is doing exactly what Dan McCannon says is crucial in these times. Bringing the rich resources of religion into the struggle, making ancient traditions new by applying them to our challenges today. How about us? What are we doing as Unitarian Universalists to be prophets of faith? Well, several of us this week participated in an interfaith vigil on Wednesday, holding up signs along Del Monte Avenue in support of the Pope. Yay! Karen Araujo called out, "We stand with the Pope on climate change." We stood with the Pope on climate change, on helping the poor, on caring for refugees and immigrants. I actually didn't think our message was that controversial. At one point, I held a sign that I had made myself. It said, "Many faiths, one earth." I loved that. I thought, come on, it's an interfaith vigil, okay? The Pope speaking out on climate change. Clearly, we're not all Catholics, so many faiths, one earth. I'm standing there, and there's a car pulls up, and a woman in the passenger seat, a young woman, looks at my sign. I can see her read it, and I can see she's angry, and she says to the driver, her friend driving the car, she says, "Many faiths, what the?" Yeah. We do have an important message to share. The UU scholar Paul Razor, in his book, Reclaiming Prophetic Witness, says, as religious liberals, we know that we are united in a single interdependent world, that human beings have the power to create good as well as evil, that our diversity is something to celebrate rather than fear, and that we can build just and liberating human communities. Not a lot of people are saying this out there. It's radical, revolutionary stuff. One of my favorite comedians, Paula Poundstone, posted on Facebook this week. She said, "Let me get this straight. Until the Pope addressed Congress, they didn't know we're supposed to care for each other and protect the earth?" But actually, that's kind of the point, that these truths bear repeating. And it makes a difference if we raise our voices and express our beliefs and priorities. Not that we are necessarily saying anything that hasn't been said before, and that shouldn't be obvious, but we need to keep saying it. Because there are those who disagree with us, and they keep saying their piece We need to be there to keep providing the other view, to remind people there is another view. So this month we've been focusing on the theme, sharing our faith. As Scott Alexander and others have pointed out, this is a topic that often makes Unitarian Universalists uncomfortable. We tend to emphasize the importance of each individual's spiritual journey, and we're very reluctant to do anything that feels like imposing our beliefs on someone else. And yet, we know there are many people out there who have no idea that an organized religion like ours even exists, and who would love to join us if they knew we were here. By not sharing our faith, we are depriving them from the opportunity to join with like-minded people here in this loving, supportive community. How many of you were basically UU before you even knew about Unitarian Universalism? How many of you wish you'd known about it even earlier? Okay, now how many of your friends know? Okay, Karen was good, okay, but how many of the rest of you? How many of your friends know that you're a Unitarian Universalist? Okay, now how many of them know it but don't necessarily really know what Unitarian Universalism is? So if they ask you, what do you say? Susan and I did put out a request for your UU elevator speech before this talk today. As she explained, again, it's how you can explain Unitarian Universalism during the length of an elevator ride. Several of you did respond. So one of you said, Unitarians are about the questions, not the answers. Truth is an anathema to me. One person's answer is another's question, and both are legitimate. Any of you agree with that? That one? Well, that was okay, right? That was pretty good. Another one of you said, Unitarian Universalism is not about dogma, but about ideas. Basically, we explore how we fit into the web of life and the universe as a whole, and share opinions about what, if anything, that may mean. Several UU publications have included some pretty good elevator speeches. Susan shared one. Luckily, not the same ones I had found. So I like this one by Victoria Mitchell. Instead of a creed, Unitarian Universalists share a spirit and vision of radical inclusivity, individual agency, and social justice. We create a safe space to stand out, stand up, and to change your mind, particularly during life's transitions. We embrace personal discovery and growth through learning, engagement, and service. Our only doctrine is love. She must live near skyscrapers, or that's a long elevator speech. But I liked it, though. I liked it. All right, here's another one. Here's a little shorter one. So Lila Ibrahim said, here it is. She says, it's a blessing you were born. It matters what you do with your life. What you know about God is a piece of the truth. You do not have to do it alone. I like that. Okay, last year, the Unitarian Universalist Association embarked on a branding campaign. I actually didn't really know about this, so, but now, like many of you, I noticed the new chalice logo they did. Have you seen that? Anyway. They also published a document, which you can find, like I did, online. Unitarian Universalist Brand Identity Guidelines. It's a 12-page document that has guidelines for using the new UUA chalice logo, font types, color palettes for brochures, and suggested content language. A quote from these branding guidelines. Our look and feel should communicate our values. Values are the foundation of our brand identity. They differentiate us from other religions and help us stand out from other organizations, groups, and campaigns that support personal growth and community transformation. These values were identified through extensive conversations with UUs from across the country. Okay, the values are boldness, compassion, and reverence. They say boldness, from striving for social justice to radically embracing different beliefs, UUs have been a bold people of faith since the beginning. Compassion. Our hearts call us to invest in the welfare of our fellow human beings, and our communities extend warmth and welcome no matter who you are, whom you love, or where you are on your journey. And finally, reverence. We unite in spirit through communities of meaning, grappling with the big questions and learning how to better live our values each day. All right, boldness, compassion, and reverence. That's not bad. I hadn't heard of it, but that's not bad. The brand guidelines, one more from the brand guidelines. They suggest an acronym summarizing our values and principles, which spells out the word justice. Okay, justice. J is for justice. U is understanding. S is spiritual growth. T is truth. I is interconnectedness. C is common good. And E is equality, justice. I'm not so sure about that one. Can you remember that? How about boldness, compassion, and reverence? Okay, all right. Okay, the great UU prophet, Pete Seeger, tells a parable. Once upon a time in the olden days, there was a king who wanted to teach his children about the world. He called his wise men and women together and said, "You know, I wish you could boil down all of the world's wisdom into one book so I could use it to teach my kids." So his wise persons went away for a whole year, and when they returned, they carried a beautiful leather-bound volume trimmed in gold. The king thumbed through the book and said, very good." He gave it to his children and said, "Okay, now learn it." After he'd given his children the book, he looked at his wise men and women and said, "You know, you did such a good job with the book. I wonder if you couldn't boil down all the world's wisdom into one sentence." Well, his wise persons went away, but this time it took them 5 years before they returned. They said, "Your Majesty, we have found the sentence." The king looked up from what he was doing and said, "Oh yeah, what is it?" The wise persons replied, "This too shall pass." As the wise men and women were preparing to leave, the king said, "You know, you did such a good job with the book and the sentence. I wonder if you couldn't boil down all of the world's wisdom into one word." Well, they must have groaned, but the wise persons went away, and it took them 10 years to finish. They returned, bent over, near blind, and said, "Your Majesty, we've decided upon the one word that expresses all of the world's wisdom." The king looked up and said, "Oh yes, what was that word?" He'd forgotten all about his little whim. The wise men and women said, "Your Majesty, the one word which sums up all of the world's wisdom is maybe." I don't know. You think maybe as the UU elevator speech? The truth is, it can be hard to simplify something that is really pretty complex. Some of the overly simplistic ways people sometimes talk about Unitarian Universalism is, Unitarian Universalists don't believe anything. UUs can believe anything they want. Or UUs don't know what they believe. Oliver Wendell Holmes once said, "I would not give a fig for the simplicity this side of complexity, but I would give my life for the simplicity on the other side of complexity." I think that's what we're striving for, the simplicity on the other side of complexity. I always like the motto of our Unitarian brothers and sisters in Transylvania. I don't know if you know this. Their symbol is a dove with a serpent, as we should be, what is it, cunning as serpents, gentle as doves. But the motto is Egy az Isten. In Hungarian, God is one. Which, believe it or not, is also a pretty radical revolutionary statement. As we heard in our children's story this morning, sometimes the recognition that God is one is the simplicity on the other side of complexity. After realizing all the other names and ideas about the divine that are out there, and still seeing the unity amidst all that important diversity. I also like the simplicity of the phrase now used in so many UU social justice efforts. We're standing on the side of love. It says so much, and it is simple, but it's not always easy. I also think that the simplicity on the other side of complexity is our embodied faith, our lived experience of Unitarian Universalism. Maybe instead of a concise elevator speech, you could tell someone about what brought you to Unitarian Universalism, what keeps you here, what spiritual struggles you've gone through, what insights you've learned. You could speak your own truth as clearly and deeply and fully and complexly as you can. There are many people out there who may be in sympathy with most Unitarian Universalist beliefs, but who have no need, at least at the moment, to join with other UU types in community, and that's fine. We're not worried about their salvation, and we don't want to force ourselves upon them. But I have to believe there are numerous people out there who really would like the support of a loving, searching community, who would enjoy our communal worship, who would be thrilled to join with us as we work to change ourselves and change the world. And those are the people who we really are depriving of an opportunity by not sharing our faith. There are young people who are questioning mainstream teachings, questioning their own identities, who have a passion to explore different religious beliefs and who want to make a difference in the world. There are young families who are searching for a religious community where they can feel welcome, where their children can learn about ethics and values and world religions and caring for the earth and each other. There are middle-aged people who may find themselves at a fork in the road or an unexpected change which has caused them to question the path they were on. There are older folks who have much to offer and who are still learning and growing and want to be appreciated and keep making a difference in the world. We offer something very unique. We offer the benefits of religious community, companionship, support, acceptance, fellowship, education, care, without some of the more traditional drawbacks of conformity or creedal tests, exclusivism, dogmatism, or rigidity. Carrie McDonald, the UUA Director of Outreach, says that research shows that what attracts people to a congregation or religious community and what keeps them are two different things. He says what attracts people is the opportunity for meaning making. What retains them is the community and friendships they build. People don't usually come because they're in search of friends or a community. They come looking for spiritual deepening for themselves or their family. And only then may they find a community which then enriches the meaning-based experience and makes them want to come back. So his advice for sharing our UU faith is, when you talk about what your congregation offers, think join our cause instead of join our club. Show what your congregation does, how it helps people live better lives and make a better world, instead of only talking about what a great community you offer. Carrie McDonald likes these new UU brand identity values, boldness, compassion, and reverence, because he says they're geared towards the most active and authentic spiritual elements of our faith. They're a departure from the pastoral, supportive, caring, community connection values that we've often described in the past. But they're well positioned to help you get to the heart of our faith movement's drive to advance our values in the world. We need our voices out in the public square, in the halls of government, on the street corners, in the marketplaces. We need to lift up our Unitarian and Universalist heroes who lived to serve others, who insisted on self-determination and freedom of conscience, who fought against oppression and conformity, who insisted on dignity and human rights and the inherent worth and dignity of all people. I do think we should all work on our elevator speeches and work at being a little more visible and explicit as to our Unitarian Universalist affiliation and our UU values. All right, in your order of service, you should have found 2 labels. One says, "Ask me about Unitarian Universalism." The other one has a several-word phrase or sentence. It's a brief button speech, shorter than an elevator speech. These say, "Follow your bliss," "Deeds not creeds," "Original innocence," "Many windows, one light," "God is too big for one religion," "The answer is to question," and more. All right, here's your challenge. Sometime in the next several days or weeks, wear it. Wear the label that says, "Ask me about Unitarian Universalism." Grocery store, friend's house, group meeting, farmer's market. See what happens. Maybe no one will ask. If they do ask, you can practice describing your UU values and beliefs. The other label you can wear, put it in your car dashboard, put it on a bulletin board, put it on the back of an envelope you're sending a bill in. You can compare your label with other people during coffee hour. Maybe they have one you like better. Think about the label that you might create to share your faith. What words speak to you describing Unitarian Universalism? Think about it. Maybe we could turn them into buttons or wristbands or t-shirts. All right, I want to close with the words of Rosemary Bray McNatt, who's currently the president of Star King School for the Ministry. And this is actually from the Unitarian Universalist Pocket Guide. She says, "There have always been people of faith like us. We are the people who sought a religion marked by freedom and reason and acceptance, in addition to faith, hope, and love. Our forebears are martyrs who died for religious freedom, ministers who preached that no one is damned to hell or outside the reach of divine love, thinkers who taught us that no spiritual tradition has a monopoly on wisdom, and activists who focused our attention on bettering this world rather than placing our hope in the afterlife. We stand in a grand and glorious stream of faith, always flowing toward freedom, justice, and love of the world. We believe in this saving message. We believe in building and sustaining communities of memory and hope, in providing way stations of resistance for a people and a world battered by the relentless assault of intolerance. If you share our vision, we welcome your voice, your hands and feet, your restless heart. Let us go out into the world, determined to live out our faith and to welcome in more voices, more hands and feet, and more restless hearts. Amen. Please join in singing our closing hymn, number 1014 in your teal paperback hymnal, Standing on the Side of Love.